Hello, welcome to Art Discourse. I'm Chrissy and this is Kyle, and today we're going to answer one of your art-related questions.
What are ways to find teaching opportunities when you're not yet an established artist?
I don't think you necessarily need to be established to start sharing your creative process with people. So I think that it might be helpful if we think about our journey in education and where we started and what that looked like and how that developed over the course of us becoming more quote-unquote established. So if we look at some of the spaces that are a little bit easier to get involved in even in the early phases, and then the middle of the road spaces, and then the areas that required us to have a lot more intensive CV, like a more intensive CV.
Hello, it's me again. I'm calling from a faraway land. Pick up the phone. I'm calling from a different time zone. Heard you are a pretty good source for major topics in art discourse. Hello, I'll leave my questions as a message at the dial tone.
So when I think of early days Sparkbox, we were talking at a lot of local events. So going to artist meetups where, it was about connecting with community and sharing stories with community. So it wasn't necessarily running a workshop per se, but it was getting us a lot more comfortable about talking about Sparkbox, talking about why we started it, and letting people know what our intentions were. So even though it wasn't technically formal teaching, it was, I would say, a precursor to us getting more comfortable doing guest lectures, which is a part of our education practice now. We immediately started running workshops at the studio. And I feel like when we were out of school, maybe because it's printmaking, we felt like we did have, relatively good understanding of a very specialized type of making. And we just kind of dove in with both feet and just went for it, even though we weren't really established yet. And maybe that takes a level of confidence and willingness to fail. But I don't know, we had a lot of fun having people come into the shop and work on the presses, and we learned a lot going through that. We got to figure out, how do you run a course? How do you keep people interested? What are the levels of I guess, understanding that people have to have? What are people comfortable with? And that, on a small scale, being in our own shop, it was easier to navigate those learning curves than if we would have immediately just went in and started teaching, in an institution or at a larger space. So that was a nice kind of beginning step into running more classes in art making.
Yeah, we were creating our own opportunities, and we were advertising those opportunities through our Arts Council or through our own social media avenues, and that's how we begun to create opportunities to teach for ourselves.
So some of those earlier, larger opportunities were working with small arts programs. Some of that was with high school students, so reaching out to the high schools and seeing if the practical skills that we were providing in the print shop could be transitioned into a school space. One of those was working with an art teacher in Trenton and having the students learn about copperplate etching. So they would do some of the work in the classroom, and then they would all come to the studio and print their plates in our shop.
Those early opportunities were self-created. Now, some of them were teaching in institutions, and we found a grant that we applied for to facilitate those, and we got support from the school board to organize those classes. They were often centered around PA days or trying to fulfill curriculum within the school. We tried to match up workshops when we pitched to high schools that would match up with the grade curriculum that the school was currently teaching. So if they were doing a 9-10 art class, we tried to find out what the overall goals of a 9-10 art class were and tried to create workshops that would fit that would make it an easier sell. often I think it's not about finding opportunities, but about creating those opportunities for yourself.
And we just kept sort of mentioning this to other schools, other spaces, and that could be arts councils, sometimes working with local museums, local arts organizations, also organizations like Pathways and like some adult learning spaces. We worked with those spaces as well. So we were kind of trying to scope out a variety of different ways that we could bring arts into the community. If there is someone in the community that is running workshops that you're interested in, but you maybe don't know how to start, or you don't really know the kind of space that you need to create, see if you could be hired by them or volunteer with them so that you can shadow them and see what it's like to be in that space, how do they run it, or attend a workshop, because that can be really helpful too. If you go to a workshop, you're going to gain a lot of information on how it feels to be a student, what kind of supplies they have set out, etc. And just take a lot of mental notes so then you can think of that and use that in building your own workshop later.
And by putting ourselves out there originally, other opportunities started kind of finding us. It is a bit of like, you have to put yourself out there, be very vulnerable, and then things will come around to you. You just have to be a bit patient and have some consistency in what you're delivering.
We also got really comfortable with talking about what we were doing with Sparkbox and sharing and being very transparent with our process, kind of like what we're doing right now. And that helped us get a different type of teaching experience. So instead of teaching someone a process, we were teaching someone about what we were doing. And those guest lectures kind of allowed us to open the doors to working in post-secondary institutions. So going to OCAD or Queen's or York University and speaking with their students about starting an arts organization, why we didn't become a not-for-profit, how do we find funding, all the things that we like to talk about on Art Discourse, we were bringing into the classroom in different types of presentations. So that was a really different type of teaching that we were doing, and that was something that we were being asked to come and do, but a lot of these institutions will post calls for guest lecturers or artist talks. So keep your eyes peeled, make connections with professors in different institutions, because you might be surprised that an opportunity could come your way just by reaching out and seeing if they would be interested in your particular type of art path, talking to the students on how that could relate and help them with their practice in the future.
If we're looking at opportunities and you're thinking about these as very traditional pathways, how do I find teaching opportunities when I'm not an established artist? Or how do I find like a tenured track position when I am not yet established? These are harder questions to kind of pursue, and tenure track is becoming less and less of a thing. But however, if this is the path of teaching that you are interested in, you have to kind of like give yourself some like space to think about the different levels of education. Teaching at a public school, at a high school level, at a college, at a university, and at a like master's or PhD level, each one is very different. Each one requires a different set of credentials to do so. And if you are interested in teaching in that post-secondary education level, you're looking to like have that master's underneath your belt. And sometimes you don't need anything other than your master's to become a teacher at that level. Experience doesn't matter sometimes. It's just whether or not you have the credentials to do so. Teaching at the high school level and at the public school level requires additional education and requires you to go to teachers college and to become certified. And I think that something that you want to sit down and think about is, what about teaching do you want? Is it that lecture, you in front of 30 students talking to them? Is it you in a massive lecture hall teaching to 500 students, talking about theory and art history? Are you more interested in small scale teaching or teaching young adults or older adults? I think sometimes teaching can be very broad, and teaching is not the same at the different levels. Teaching public school versus teaching university are very, very different things.
I 100% agree with you. And I think this is something that we've talked about a lot, and something that I think we've kind of grappled with is, like, what is it about teaching that feels important? Is it saying I teach at X institution and that's what's actually like filling me up? Or is it making valuable connections with other makers and helping support them in their career? And for me, it's more the supporting individuals in their career than saying I work for a specific space. And that's why like any type of knowledge sharing feels satisfying to me. So, we have taught at post-secondary institutions, we've run private workshops, we've been mentors, and we also share like this online to a community that sometimes we've never met any of them, and we don't even necessarily know the impact we might be making. And all of those different versions of teaching feel very gratifying to me. Like, I like all of them. I think that what you want to do is really figure out what is the philosophy of teaching that you're interested in and what space are you most drawn to, and then look at others that are working in that space and try to see how they navigated into that field. So if you're looking for a more traditional style of teaching, then moving from emerging to established is going to be getting your credentials to teach in those spaces. So going for your MFA, going for your PhD, going into teachers college, that is how you're going to become a candidate in those spaces. If you're wanting to work with the public and with the community, then you can look for opportunities where maybe residencies are looking for instructors, maybe your local guilds are looking for people to volunteer as instructors, maybe you have a studio that you can open up and invite people in to do instruction if you're wanting it to be in real space. But another opportunity, if you're just wanting to get, in there right away, is to teach online. Maybe do Instagram lives where you're showing people a process. Maybe you go on Skillshare and post videos on something that you're interested in sharing your knowledge there. Maybe you create a newsletter that goes out weekly and people can engage in exercises, or Patreon where you do weekly meetups and you run through like a sketching series or a sculpting series. There are a lot of different avenues that you can take, but you really have to think about what is going to make you excited and fulfilled, and then sort of navigate in that direction.
These opportunities are out there. You don't have to be an established artist to get any of them. You just have to be persistent, and you have to be consistent with that. It's starting small, building up, and eventually you're going to get to that place that you want to be. Understanding where you want to be can really help you shape the path that you take. If you are indeed headed for that tenure track professor, you will want to make strategic moves to move towards that, trying to get opportunities that are about lecturing to larger groups of people as opposed to private one-on-one workshops.
Just start looking for opportunities that are small to start, that are within your local space if possible, and gradually start building on top of those. You're going to probably fail sometimes, and that's totally okay. It's very normal. And as you build more confidence, you're gonna see more people reaching out to ask you to get involved in things that they're running, and start seizing those opportunities and trying different things. Kyle and I have taught in a lot of variety of different ways, whether that be small or with large corporate organizations, and all of them have taught us something new, and we've brought all of the different things that we've learned over the years into each of those spaces. So best of luck. Hopefully you can get out there and start teaching in a way that feels really great to you. We look forward to answering another question soon, so come back and join us. And if you have a question that you want us to answer, share it in the comments below, or find our email in the description and send it our way. We'll be happy to discuss it for you.